Hello and welcome to RAN in Focus, a podcast brought to you by the Radicalization Awareness Network, RAN Practitioners. My name is Jordan Eijnhuis and today we're going to talk about online exit work. As we all know, the online world has grown exponentially in the last decade, along with a huge increase of CVE issues online.
Many people are getting out less, interacting less, and often spending most of their time online. And accessing individuals is also often online. But how does this work with the exit process? Helping people to leave radical environments and extremist groups is a lengthy process of support and engagement, often done face-to-face with everything from counseling to practical skills and support to reintegration. And then there's families to consider, not to mention the ethical considerations, rules and regulations around privacy and access. In this podcast, I'm going to investigate how we as practitioners can operate in this online space.
We'll be looking at the difficulties and challenges, but also at the possibilities that online exit work can offer.
And joining me in this investigation will be Lotta Carlsson, Senior Advisor and Exit Worker at the Helsinki Diakoness Foundation in Finland. Lotta has been involved in exit work for over a decade and has been proactively involved developing online exit work for the country of Finland.
Hi Lotta, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So to get us started, can you tell me a bit about your work and the work you do at the Helsinki Diakoness Foundation?
I've been an exit worker at the Helsinki Diakoness Foundation. We're a huge foundation, around 3,000 workers, and we're national. I've been doing mostly exit work, preventive, and also de-radicalization, meeting clients mostly.
Can you tell me a bit about that online element of your work? In this series of podcasts, we like to zoom in on the online aspect of CVE. How do you include the online element in your exit work?
In EXIT Finland, the online work is much included because we have clients nationally, so we don't always travel, or the client doesn't travel, so we meet online, different kinds of online work, and mostly direct phone calls with clients. And then, of course, Teams and texts, all different kinds of forms, chatbots, whatever, really low barrier for the clients to reach us.
So it's really utilizing online tools as a way to communicate with clients.
Yes.
Can you tell me a bit about the chatbot? That sounds fascinating.
Because of the hard work to reach clients, EXIT Finland have had to be really inventive and do a lot of different online, offline work, mostly online, to reach clients. Educations in, for example, how to use Telegram, if it's allowed, because we're a huge foundation. We have quite strict rules on what can be used. So there's been a lot of discussions with the IT department and so on. Can we go into deep webs? Where's the line on reaching clients? But we've learned a lot along the way also. Chatbots were used, for example, certain hours. There was a campaign about that as well. So they could reach us quite easily if needed.
And do you also utilize these platforms to find people who need help and support? Or is it really more that you got a presence so they can reach out to you?
Yes, because it's voluntary.
What kind of platforms do you use? You mentioned Telegram a bit.
Are there any other types of platforms you're on where you might find your target audience?
We have specific Finnish forums where we know that our clients meet and discuss certain topics, and they're legal forums. We keep it on the legal spaces and different spaces as well.
Oh, so you're also active in those forums?
Mostly we're not that active. We more follow. We don't go in there and reach out to clients actively. We follow the situation and inform, but not actively. Just so they know we exist, but that's all. And of course we work outside Finnish borders to camps in northern Syria, for example, and how to reach people that are in these vulnerable positions. Finnish soldiers still in Ukraine, fighting voluntary and so on. So there's a lot of different spaces also. And for example, with text, with someone who then talks to someone else. So there's many different forms of interaction as well.
So that sounds like first, it sounds like really hard work. But also that you really have to dedicate hours and capacity to be informed and also to find these communities or places where these people are.
Yes.
So how do you make sure that that's built into the day-to-day of the foundation or of the people you work with?
As you say, consistency in the work, because it's all about trust. And you really have to work on the trust. Sometimes you work years on the trust. And they might contact you, and then someone might contact you a year later on again, because they were maybe following, noticing what's happening. They might have seen some forums where we've been at, but didn't contact, and then maybe a year later contacts. So it's all about trust.
Is that the only upside of working online, or do you see more benefits to really focus on the online?
And what are the benefits specific to working online that might make the exit process easier?
It's, I think, also the anonymity. I don't know where they are, who they are, and they want to keep it that way. And they do their own inner work with changing views, changing values, but they don't want to tell who they are. So they can keep the camera closed if we have a Teams call. So I don't know who I'm talking to, but still I'm doing the work. So I think that's one benefit.
So I find that element of anonymity very interesting. But I can also imagine that it might be a limitation to what you're doing online.
Yes.
So
also considering privacy laws, GDPR, the upcoming Digital Service Act, and getting a person to trust an online account, what are the barriers and limitations to doing effective exit work online? And what do you need to keep in mind?
It's not only the anonymity, it's also security. You don't know who's with the client. There might be a whole family listening because there's not privacy or space at home. So the client might not be able to talk properly, for example. And maybe if different family members have different views, there might be arguing at home because of this. And of course, technically, do you have equipment? Do you have phones? Do you have enough battery to hold the phone for 1 hour? And if we discuss for one session? So there's a lot of also, when it comes to this anonymity, also like ethical things in general. So there's a lot of risks as well. But there are benefits and risks.
Like in everything, right?
Exactly.
It sounds like you've got a pretty robust system where online and offline go hand in hand. Was it difficult to get everyone on board? I can also imagine that this might be a bit more difficult for funders to include or to fund, or for people who are a bit more reluctant to go into online spaces.
Oh, yeah. When you plan a project and apply for funding, the technical part is so important to remember to include from the beginning. But then again, in general, people in violent extremist groups are technical because they connect internationally. So I haven't seen any problems with the technical part. People have phones where they're not allowed to have phones, and they reach out. It's quite much of technology today, I would say. And I think that's so important. If we discuss, for example, RAN, the Radicalization Awareness Network, that made it possible also for the practitioners to have an international network. I know who to talk to in Europe when I need more information on specific country topics and so on. And I think we practitioners stay ahead when we have a network, a stable network that we can reach out to, just as our clients are doing, because they're usually connected internationally. They go across borders.
Exactly. I'm very happy that you brought this up because you're well plugged into the RAN network and the working groups.
What kind of developments are you seeing in other countries when it comes to online exit work? Maybe things where you can learn from each other.
I've talked to, just for a great example, the Danish. They have this online work with youth, and they've made just perfect like manuals on how to talk to youth, like for example, texts. You never know the feeling in a text message. You only get the text. Mm-hmm. So you can interpret it in a way you want, or the feeling you have at the moment. So they've gone deep in that work, how to send a text message, how it looks like, because words matter so much. It's unbelievable. But still, of course, there's the interpretation of the meaning of the sentence when it comes to text messaging. So I would say the Danes they've done pretty much more deep work on this, how to discuss online, and I find their manuals that they made quite great.
And do you have other examples from Europe? And maybe this is a bit biased, but often when we look for, digital innovation, they're usual suspects. And I would say Denmark is one of the countries, but of course also Finland. Speaking of Finland, it has a relatively small population, high levels of media literacy, also high levels of trust in authority, I might say.
Yeah.
So it feels like you're in a perfect position to implement this really robustly in your country. Do you think this could also work in a country that's a bit more, well, it has a different context when it comes to these things? I'm thinking about some Southern European countries. I've never really heard stories from their online approach because we often look at the usual suspects. Do you have an insight in that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't come to think of, or I haven't discussed so much with any Southern European countries on their online work. So that's really true what you bring out there. It's not like that common in all countries, but I think it's good to look into other fields, online counseling in general, psychotherapy, clinical counseling. What do they have? What did COVID give us? And so on. So I've still, even if I haven't discussed so much with some countries about this, I think it's coming more and more anyway, because many countries were forced to grade up on the technical parts because of COVID.
It was really a catalyst for embracing digital tools.
Yeah.
So what could other countries learn from the Finnish approach then? So let's create a little template for other countries who want to adopt this.
Consultations around applying funding, because that's the core. And then, of course, the time. We don't have many radicalized persons in Finland really sentenced to prison. We don't have that much clients, so it's easy to control in a way as well. And we work closely with the police, with other governmental institutions. We have a broad CSO field in general. We're easy to reach also when it comes to consultations. I would keep a low barrier there on reaching out and asking, like, how do you do this and how do you do that? I do that quite much. Again, when I meet my RAN colleagues, so I learn more from those who does this on a daily basis.
Maybe looking ahead a little bit, AI is coming up, but also virtual reality might actually become a big thing in the next 5 years. Do you see any possibilities with those new technologies?
AI is used in so many different ways. For example, when it comes to security and geopolitics in general, and you can map so much with AI when people move, where they move. Yes, there's a lot of opportunities when it comes to control, and also different groups, violent extremists, terrorist groups. And I would use it in a larger sense, but then again also the next generation exit workers, they will be digital natives. I'm not that generation, so I had to learn everything. If we discuss RAN Youth, that working group, they will grow up with all these digital equipment. It's not something separated from online and offline. It's their world with both. So I think AI will be just one more thing really in this whole thing, or we won't be discussing it in pods and so on, and they're using it just like any other instruments.
That's interesting that you mentioned digital natives. Are you hopeful for these digital natives?
Yes, I am, because, well, hopefully, yes. Always when it's a question about AI and so on, there's also human rights involved. Where's the limit? Where's the line? What's freedom of speech and what's hate speech? So there's always these questions that will be existing. And even if you're really a digital native and you've grown up with all of this, there's always questions that will exist.
So do you have any advice for practitioners who, well, maybe have a little bit of cold feet when it comes to embracing the online, or maybe who aren't confident about it and aren't sure about the do's and don'ts?
Well, if you work with clients directly, it's really de-radicalizing or disengaging work, then put time and effort into trust building. It's really the most important, because after you have a person's trust, you can start to also say, no, I can't do it then. Can we discuss then and so on? So you can have boundaries in your exit work, because in the beginning, usually you have to be a little bit of boundaryless to build the trust with someone. After that, you can flex. And also, if there's questions around child welfare and you need to report, for example, if you hear something that you have to by law report, then that can be stretched as well. So if you have the trust, you can work better, I think. As an exit worker, to really take the anxiety of not knowing or knowing if you will have the client's trust. You can't push someone into anything, so you really have to be laid back and stay there until the client wants to work with you. And that's a thin line, because usually you're eager to work and start the process, but everybody has their own pace. Someone might have thought of leaving an extremist group for 2 years, and then when they're finally ready, then you can't start pushing anything. You just have to be there for them.
Maybe don't expect immediate results when you embrace the online.
No. There's so much stigma and shame leaving an extremist group, and you're so labeled. There's a lot of fear around this, a lot of anxiety around this. So there's a lot of feelings you also have to take and stand these feelings and show the client, even online, in a text, that you're not afraid here, you're not stigmatizing, and you can really take all of this, what the client will tell you. You can take it, then they can take it.
So it's really about building a safe space, a safe environment
Yes.
to communicate in. And I can imagine that being available online is of added value when you talk about, mental health issues.
Yes.
Because mental health issues are not a 9-to-5 thing. So I think the chatbot really fits in with that concept by being available there. Do you think the future will bring more bespoke versions of that? I can imagine that AI, but also personalized avatars in an online space could really be an added benefit when we talk about mental health and people looking for help outside of office hours.
Oh, yes. Oh, there's so many apps already to use, like all kinds of apps where you can regulate feelings, for example, train how to regulate feelings, train how to regulate impulses. So you won't hit the wall. You will open the app and then concentrate on what you need to concentrate on to not be violent, for example. And yes, so there's a lot of, digital equipment already out there. Telehealth is developing fast because the need of mental health services in this context is huge.
It's actually kind of a hopeful future with these new technologies. It will become easier to give people the help they need in an online context.
Oh, yes, I see it as a positive thing.
That's good to hear. So my final question, do you have any tips for practitioners in the network to find more information or more insights about these topics?
Well, just Google RAN. And there's a lot of papers written already on the topic. And there's some good films made on the topic. And I think there's material. So you don't have to be alone with difficult questions. And that's also a question of international safety, that RAN has this material. You know where to find materials when you need help with difficult situations in general. So it's a matter of European security, really.
So I think we've pretty much covered as much as we can for now. I would like to thank my guest, Lotta Carlsson, for joining me today. Thank you so much, Lotta.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure and an honor to be here.
And also thank you to all for listening. Please do join me on the next episode of the RAN in Focus podcast, brought to you by RAN practitioners. Goodbye for now.